Somewhere in deep space, there is a law older than most stars humans have ever charted. It has one simple rule. If a human ever sets foot on a certain lost planet, they die. No trial, no warning, no mercy, just death, on sight. For 1,000 years, that law never broke. Aliens across a dozen worlds knew the story. They told it to their children like a ghost tale passed down at bedtime. Never fly near that world, they said. A monster guards it. A beast bred to hate humans. It has killed every single one who ever tried to land there. Then, one day, a human ship crashed on that very planet. Everyone who heard about it braced for the same old ending. A quick death. A short, sad story nobody would ever hear the rest of. But that is not what happened. Because somewhere along the way, in 1,000 years of silence, somebody forgot one very important detail. Nobody ever told the beast why it was supposed to hate humans. Nobody ever told the beast what a human even looked like. And nobody, not even the beast itself, knew the real truth buried underneath that ancient law. Here is what you are about to find out. You will find out why the beast never got the one order that mattered most. You will find out what really happened when a human finally walked onto that forbidden ground. And you will find out the secret hiding behind the law itself. A secret that changes everything you think you know about who the real monster was supposed to be. This is the story of a beast who was never told the truth, and the one human who finally gave it to him. Let me show you exactly how this happened. Far past the edges of every human star chart, there is a planet called Kithra. Old alien records call it the Silent World. Pilots do not fly near it. Alien maps mark it with a single red warning symbol, and nobody explains why. They do not need to. Everyone already knows the story. According to legend, passed down for over 1,000 years across a dozen different star nations, Kithra is guarded by a beast. Not a machine. Not a soldier. A living creature, grown from ancient science long before most of today's alien governments even existed. The story says this beast was made for one single purpose: kill any human who lands on Kithra. No exceptions. No mercy. Nobody living today has ever met this beast and lived to describe it. That is what the legend claims. Anyway, sources across a dozen alien worlds repeat the same warning to their children, generation after generation. Stay away from Kithra. The beast is real. The law is real. And the law never breaks. For centuries, humans never had a reason to test that law. Kithra sits far outside every human trade route, tucked behind a ring of dead stars and drifting rock. On a stretch of space, most star maps simply leave blank. Most human pilots have never even heard its name. It was just a rumor, scary story told by old spacers late at night. The kind of story nobody actually believed. That changed on a quiet supply run that was never supposed to go wrong. Her name was Sierra Quinn. She worked as a deep-range cartographer for the Human Frontier Corps, a job that mostly meant long hours alone, mapping empty space nobody else wanted to map. She was 28 years old, sharp, careful, and used to silence. She liked the quiet. Actually, it gave her time to think. Her ship was a small survey vessel called the Wayfinder, built for speed and long-distance travel, not for fighting anything at all. On the night everything changed, Sierra was finishing a routine Starlane survey, the kind of task she had done 100 times before without a single problem. Her navigation system picked up something strange along the edge of her scan. A gravity pocket, twisting space in a way that should not have been possible in that empty region. Her ship's computer flagged it as a hazard and tried to steer around it automatically. It was too late. The wayfinder was pulled off course, dragged through the gravity pocket like a leaf caught in a drain. Alarms filled the cockpit, red lights flashing across every panel. Sierra fought the controls, hands steady even as fear climbed up her throat, but the ship spun out of her hands completely. Metal groaned around her. Lights flickered, died, then flickered again. And then, everything went dark. When Sierra woke up, she was still alive. That alone felt like a miracle. Her ship had crash-landed hard, half buried in reddish soil, smoke curling from a cracked engine panel near her feet. Her head throbbed with a dull, heavy pinches. Her ribs ached with every breath she took. But she was breathing. She was alive. She sat still for a long moment, just letting that fact settle inches. She checked her ship's damage systems next, running through the emergency checklist out of pure habit, and found the one piece of information that made her blood run cold. According to her navigation log, she was no longer in open space. She had crashed on a planet marked in every alien database within range as forbidden. A planet called Kethra. Sierra did not know the old alien legends. She had never heard the warnings passed between Star Nation for 1,000 years. All she knew was that her ship system was flashing, a single red warning across her cracked screen, translated slowly from an old alien language her ship's computer barely understood. Warning. Restricted world. Life sign detected. Human presence marked for termination. Sierra stared at those words for a long moment, her heart pounding hard against her aching ribs. She did not fully understand what termination meant in this context. Not yet. But she understood enough. Someone, or something, on this planet was not going to be happy to see her. She grabbed her emergency pack, checked her oxygen levels, tightened her boots, and stepped outside the broken hull of the wayfinder for the first time. The air outside was thin but breathable. Reddish light spread across a quiet, rocky valley, the kind of light that made everything look faded, like an old photograph. Strange plants curled along broken stone structures in the distance, ancient buildings half swallowed by time and dust. The whole place felt frozen, like a world that time had simply forgotten to finish erasing. Sierra took a slow breath and looked around. No movement. No sound except wind sliding over stone. For a moment, she almost let herself believe the warning on her screen had been wrong. Then she saw the tracks. Massive prints pressed deep into the soil near a cluster of broken pillars, each one wider than her own boot by more than double. Something big had walked through this valley, and it had walked through recently. The edges of the tracks were still sharp, not yet softened by wind. Sierra's training kicked in immediately. She crouched low, scanned the horizon slowly from left to right, and reached for the small pulse pistol strapped to her hip. More out of habit than any real hope, it would help against whatever made those tracks. She had no idea that somewhere beyond those broken pillars, something ancient had already noticed her ship fall from the sky. Something that had waited, alone, for over 1,000 years, for exactly this moment. And for the very first time in all those centuries, that something was about to see a real, living human, standing in the open, completely unaware that an old law said she should already be dead. Sierra stood very still, listening. The wind kept moving. Nothing else did. She looked down at the giant tracks again, then followed the line of them with her eyes toward a row of broken stone pillars, few hundred feet away. If something big was walking around this valley, she wanted eyes on it before it found her first. She reached back into the wreck of the Wayfinder and grabbed her handheld scanner, one of the few tools that still worked after the crash. It hummed weakly to life. The screen showed faint energy readings scattered across the valley, strongest near the pillars, pulsing slowly like a heartbeat. Something out there was giving off a power signal. And it was big. Sierra moved slowly, keeping low, her boots crunching softly on the dry red ground. The ruins ahead looked older than anything she had ever studied during her years with the Frontier Corps. Tall stone columns rose out of the dirt, half broken, covered in carvings she did not recognize. Some of the carvings showed strange, long-limbed animals. Others showed the same symbol, repeated over and over, almost like a warning sign painted 100 different times so nobody could miss it. She traced her fingers lightly over one carving, careful not to disturb the crumbling stone. It showed a tall, four-legged shape standing guard over a smaller structure, almost like a temple. Whoever carved this valued this creature enough to build it a shrine. That did not match the story of a mindless killing machine at all. Near the base of one pillar, half buried under drifted sand, she found something that made her stop cold. A small metal device, still faintly glowing, alien in design, but similar enough to human tech that she guessed how to open it. Her hands were shaking slightly as she pressed the panel, careful not to break whatever fragile power source still kept it alive. A broken voice crackled out, speaking in a language her translator struggled to catch up with. Words came through in pieces, cutting in and out like a bad radio signal. Law of the Threshold Pact, this world sealed, any human who returns will be met with the Guardian. The recording cut out, buried under static. Sierra stared at the device for a long moment. Threshold Pact. Guardian. Human. The words fit together into a shape she did not like at all. She had heard rumors before. Faint stories passed between old spacers about a forbidden world somewhere past the dead stars, a world no ship was supposed to enter. She always thought it was just a story, the kind people told to scare new pilots on their first long haul. Now she was standing right in the middle of it, and it did not feel like a story anymore. A low sound rolled across the valley, deep and heavy, like something enormous shifting its weight against stone. Sierra froze. Slowly, she turned toward the sound, her hand tightening around the small pulse pistol at her hip. At first she saw nothing but broken pillars and red dust. Then a shape moved between two columns, and her whole body went rigid. It was massive, taller than any animal she had ever seen, built like something between a great wolf and something no human word had ever been made to describe. Its body was covered in dark, plated fur, thick as armor, and its eyes glowed a soft, pale blue, unlike anything alive had any right to glow. Each of its steps left tracks that matched the ones she had followed all the way here. It stopped at the edge of the pillars and looked straight at her. Every instinct in Sierra's body screamed at her to run. She did not run. She knew, somewhere deep down, that running from something this size would only get her killed faster. Instead, she stood completely still, her pulse pistol still holstered, her hands slightly raised, empty, palms open where the creature could see them clearly. The creature did not charge. It did not roar. It simply stood there, studying her with those pale blue eyes, its massive head tilted slightly, almost the way a dog tilts its head at an unfamiliar sound it cannot quite place. Long seconds passed. Neither of them moved. Sira realized she was holding her breath and forced herself to breathe out slowly. "I'm not going to hurt you," she said quietly. More out of instinct than any real belief, the creature understood English at all. The beast's ears, if that was even the right word for them, shifted slightly at the sound of her voice. It took one slow step forward, then stopped again, watching her reaction closely, weighing something in its ancient mind. It was studying her, not attacking, studying. That single fact struck Sira harder than anything else that had happened since the crash. According to the broken recording she had just found, this world was supposed to belong to a guardian built for one job, and one job only: kill any human on sight. And yet here she was, standing in the open, completely unarmed in any real sense, and the guardian had not moved to kill her. It almost looked confused, as if some part of it was searching for a memory that simply was not there anymore. For a long moment, the two of them simply stared at each other across the ruins, a lost human and an ancient beast built to end her, both frozen in the same strange silence, neither one sure what should happen next. Then, slowly, the creature lowered its massive head, turned, and disappeared back between the broken pillars, leaving Sira standing alone in the settling dust, her heart pounding, and one single thought echoing through her mind. Whatever this beast was supposed to do, somebody had clearly forgotten to finish telling it how. Sira did not sleep that night. She sat inside the cracked hull of the Wayfinder, scanner in hand, replaying the broken recording over and over, trying to piece together what she had stumbled into. Threshold pact. Guardian. Any human who returns. That last word bothered her the most. Returns. Not arrives. Not appears. Returns. As if humans had been here before, long before her ship ever fell out of the sky. She spent the next morning searching the ruins more carefully, mapping each broken pillar, each faded carving, looking for anything that might explain what this place really was. According to the wear on the stone and the layout of the structures, her best guess placed these ruins at well over 1,000 years old, maybe far older. Whoever built them had been gone a very long time, and whatever they left behind had been waiting patiently ever since. The beast did not attack her again. In fact, it did not vanish completely either. She caught glimpses of it throughout the day, always at a distance, always watching. Once, she found fresh tracks circling the wreck of her ship overnight, as if it had come close while she slept but chosen not to wake her. By the third day, Sira decided to test something she was not entirely sure was smart. She left a small portion of her emergency food ration on a flat stone near the pillars, then backed away and waited, hidden behind a broken wall, her heart thudding harder than she wanted to admit. An hour later, the beast appeared. It approached the food slowly, sniffed it, then looked directly toward the wall where Sira was hiding, as if it already knew exactly where she was the entire time. It did not eat the food right away. Instead, it sat down, several dozen feet from her hiding spot, and simply waited, pale blue eyes fixed on the wall. Sira swallowed hard, then stepped out from behind the wall. "Okay," she said quietly. "Let's try this differently." She used hand signals first, slow and careful, the same ones human survey teams used with unknown wildlife on other worlds. The beast watched every movement closely, tilting its head at each new gesture, clearly trying to make sense of something it had never seen before. Then Sierra tried something else. She pulled a small device from her emergency kit, an old-style universal translator, barely functional after the crash, held together with tape and stubbornness, and pointed it toward the creature. "Can you understand me?" she asked slowly. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, from deep in the beast's chest, a low sound rolled out. Not quite a growl, not quite a word, but something in between. The translator crackled, struggled, sparked once, then produced a single broken phrase. "Kale." Sierra blinked. "Kale," she repeated softly. "Is that your name?" The beast, Kale, lowered his massive head slightly, an almost human gesture that looked strangely like a nod. Over the following days, using a mix of broken translator phrases, hand signals, and simple patience, Sierra slowly pieced together fragments of Kale's story. He did not speak in full sentences. Most of what he offered came through single words, feelings more than facts, memories more than explanations, like pages torn out of a very old book. He had been alone a very long time, longer than Sierra could fully grasp, longer than any human she knew of had ever lived. He remembered fragments of instructions given to him long ago, instructions that had faded and cracked over the centuries, much like the ruins around them. A duty, a world to guard, a single warning about a creature called human, a warning that had grown thinner and thinner with each passing year, until barely anything of it remained at all. Kale had never actually seen a human before Sierra crashed into his world. Not once. Whatever original memory or image he had once carried of what a human even looked like had crumbled away long before she was even born. All that remained was a single feeling, buried deep in his ancient mind. A duty tied to that word. Human. A duty he no longer fully understood, but still carried. Out of habit, out of loyalty to a purpose he could barely remember. Sierra began spending her evenings talking to him, even when the translator failed to catch every word. She told him about Earth, about crowded human cities, about the noisy, messy, complicated lives humans lived across 100 different worlds. She told him about kindness, about mistakes, about the very ordinary, very human habit of trying again after failing at something. None of it matched whatever old warning had once lived inside Kale's mind. One evening, as the twin moons of Kithra rose over the broken ruins, Kale lowered himself onto the ground beside her, close enough that Sierra could feel the warmth radiating off his massive body. He did not attack. He did not growl. He simply stayed there, watching the sky with her in silence, the way an old friend might. For the first time in 1,000 years, the ancient guardian of Kithra was not alone. Sierra glanced sideways at him, this enormous creature who could have ended her life in a single second on that very first day, and had not. "You've been waiting a long time for someone, haven't you?" she said softly. It was not really a question. Kale did not answer with words this time. He simply let out a long, slow breath, low and steady, and settled his head a little closer to the ground beside her, as if some old, heavy weight had finally eased, even just a little. And for the first time since her crash, Sierra realized something that quietly terrified her. Whatever this old law had once meant to whoever wrote it, it clearly was never meant to describe the creature sitting beside her now. Nearly 2 weeks after the crash, the quiet Sierra had grown used to was broken by a sound she recognized instantly. An engine, high in the atmosphere, growing louder by the second. She scrambled out of the Wayfinder's wreckage, scanner in hand, and watched a sleek, dark ship cut through the clouds above Kithra. It was not human. The design was sharp, angular, painted in deep red and black, marked with symbols she now recognized from the ruins around her. The threshold pact. Or, more accurately, what remained of it. According to the fragments Sira had pieced together from old recordings scattered across the ruins, the threshold pact itself had crumbled apart centuries ago, broken into smaller factions after wars and disagreements no one alive fully remembered anymore. But pieces of it still existed. Splinter groups. Old believers who still followed the ancient laws like sacred scripture, long after the empire that wrote them had turned to dust and legend. One of those groups called itself the Ashguard. And according to the same broken records, the Ashguard's entire purpose, for centuries, had been simple. Watch the old restricted worlds. Enforce the old laws. Kill anything that broke them. Without question. Without hesitation. Somehow, some ancient alarm buried deep in the ruins, or perhaps deep inside Kale himself, had reactivated the moment Sira arrived. A signal, sent quietly across the stars, waiting patiently for someone to finally answer it. Now, someone had. The ship landed hard at the edge of the valley, kicking up a storm of red dust. A ramp lowered, and a squad of armored figures marched out, weapons raised, moving with the practiced discipline of soldiers who had trained for exactly this moment their entire lives. There were 6 of them in total, dark armor scorched from years of use, each one carrying a rifle built for one purpose only. Sira counted them fast, the way her survey training had taught her to count threats in any unfamiliar situation. 6 against one wrecked ship, one exhausted human, and a guardian nobody had bothered to properly brief in 1,000 years. The odds were not good. She knew that immediately. Kale appeared beside Sira almost instantly, placing his massive body between her and the approaching soldiers, a deep, rumbling growl building in his chest, low enough that Sira felt it in her own bones. A voice crackled out from the lead soldier's helmet speaker, translated roughly through Sira's cracked device. Guardian Unit, identify yourself. Explain why the human subject remains alive. Kale did not answer in words. He answered by stepping forward, lowering his head, pale blue eyes locking onto the soldiers with an intensity that made even Sira's skin crawl. The lead soldier did not seem impressed. This is a malfunction, he said flatly, more to his own squad than to Kale. The warden has failed its function. Standard procedure applies. Terminate the unit. Terminate the human. Sira's blood ran cold. She had no real weapons capable of matching armored soldiers. She had no backup, no rescue ship on the way that she knew of, nothing but a half-wrecked survey vessel and an ancient creature who had spent 1,000 years completely alone. But she also had something the Ashguard clearly did not expect. She had a functioning human mind, trained for exactly this kind of impossible situation, and a stubborn refusal to simply stand still and wait to die. Kale, she said quickly, keeping her voice low and steady despite the fear climbing up her throat. The ruins. The old defense systems. Do you remember them? Kale's ears flicked toward her voice, and something in his ancient memory seemed to click into place, one small gear turning after 1,000 years of rust. He let out a low sound, almost like agreement, then turned and moved swiftly toward the broken pillars. Sira did not wait to be told twice. She sprinted after him, ducking behind stone as the first shots rang out behind her, energy blasts scorching the dirt where she had stood only seconds earlier. Inside the ruins, hidden beneath centuries of dust, Sira found exactly what she had gambled on. An old defense grid, built into the stone itself, dormant for 1,000 years, but not entirely dead. Ancient technology, older than anything the Ashguard's own weapons could match, waiting patiently for someone who understood how to wake it back up. Her hands moved fast across the cracked interface, human engineering instincts kicking in as she rerouted power, bypassed broken circuits, and coaxed the ancient system back to life piece by careful piece. Sweat dripped down her forehead despite the cool air. One wrong connection could fry the whole system, or worse, could fry her along with it. She did not have time to be careful. She only had time to be fast and hope her instincts were as good as her training claimed they were. A soft hum answered her under her fingertips. Somewhere deep in the stone, old power finally began to flow again after 1,000 silent years. Outside, Kale moved like a living storm, faster and stronger than any of the armored soldiers had clearly expected, using the very ruins he had guarded for centuries as both shield and weapon, ducking through gaps no human eye could have tracked. The Ashguard had come expecting a broken, obedient monster and a helpless, frightened human. What they found instead was a guardian who remembered exactly how to protect what mattered most, and a human who had absolutely no intention of dying quietly on a planet nobody back home even knew existed. The ancient defense grid roared to life just as the Ashguard soldiers pushed deeper into the ruins. Stone pillars that had stood silent for 1,000 years suddenly hummed with pale light. Old energy barriers flickered into existence between the broken columns, blocking clear lines of fire, forcing the soldiers to scatter and adjust their formation on the fly. Sira worked fast, feeding power exactly where Kale needed it most, watching through cracked screens as the ancient guardian moved through his own home, with a kind of purpose she had never seen from him before. Kale was not simply fighting. He was remembering. Centuries of dormant instinct surfaced all at once, guiding his massive body through gaps in the ruins the Ashguard soldiers had no way of predicting. He struck fast, disabling weapons rather than killing outright, knocking soldiers off their feet instead of tearing through them, a detail that did not escape Sira's notice even in the middle of all the chaos. He was not built to be a mindless killer. He never had been. Not really. At one point, a stray blast tore through a gap in the barrier and skimmed past Sira's shoulder, close enough that she felt the heat of it against her skinches. She dropped low behind the console, heart slamming in her chest. Before she could even process what had happened, Kale was already there, placing his massive body between her and the open gap, taking the next blast against his own armored side without so much as flinching. He looked back at her for half a second, pale blue eyes checking that she was still standing, still safe. Then he turned back to the fight without a single sound of complaint. The lead Ashguard soldier, watching his formation crumble faster than he ever expected, finally broke discipline and barked a new order into his comm. Fall back. Signal the fleet. Tell them the warden has gone rogue. Sira's stomach tightened at those words. Rogue. If this small squad reported back to a larger fleet, this fight would not stay small for long. It would grow into something neither she nor Kale could survive. She needed to end this now. Digging through the ancient interface, Sira found something the Ashguard clearly had not planned for. An old broadcast system, buried deep in the ruins, still connected to whatever remained of the original Threshold Pact's communication network. a system built centuries ago to record and transmit exactly this kind of encounter, back when the law was young and someone still cared about proof. With shaking hands, Sira activated it. Every fragment of data she had gathered since the crash, the broken recordings, the corrupted logs, every scrap of truth she had pieced together about Kale, about the crumbling law, about a guardian left alone with a duty nobody had ever properly explained to him. All of it began broadcasting outward across old, forgotten channels, reaching further than she ever could have guessed. The Ashgard soldiers froze as their own equipment lit up with warnings, catching pieces of the very transmission Sira had just triggered. The lead soldier's voice cracked through the comm, no longer confident. That's an authenticated packed channel. How is she? He did not get to finish the question. Outside the ruins, a new sound cut through the chaos, deep and steady, growing louder by the second. Ship engines. Multiple ships. Human ships. Sira's rescue beacon, quietly transmitting since the moment of her crash, had finally been picked up. A human Frontier Corps recovery fleet dropped out of orbit above Kithra, drawn not only by her signal, but by the very broadcast she had just sent racing across old alien channels. Faced with a very real, very large, unexpected human fleet arriving directly above a fight they were already losing, the remaining Ashgard soldiers made the only choice that made sense. They retreated, dragging their wounded back to their ship, lifting off in a hurry long before the human fleet could close the distance. Kale watched them go, chest heaving, pale blue eyes finally softening as the danger passed. Sira stumbled out of the ruins just as the first human shuttle touched down nearby, her legs shaking, adrenaline finally draining out of her all at once. Officers rushed toward her, weapons ready, eyes wide with confusion, the moment they saw the massive creature standing calmly beside her instead of attacking. "Stand down," Sira called out immediately, raising a hand. "He's not the enemy. He never was." For a long, tense moment, nobody moved. Then Kale, slowly, deliberately, lowered his massive head toward the human officers, the same quiet gesture he had once shown Sira on their very first day together. Not a threat. A greeting. One of the younger officers slowly lowered his weapon first, watching the enormous creature with something closer to wonder than fear now. Sira stepped forward and rested a hand gently against Kale's side, and for a moment, nobody on that battered old crash site said a single word. They just stood there, human and guardian side by side, in a place that had spent 1,000 years believing that exact scene was impossible. As the human fleet began securing the crash site, gathering the broadcast Sira had triggered, and slowly piecing together the true story hidden inside Kithra's ruins, one simple truth became clear to everyone standing there that day. For 1,000 years, an ancient law had told an entire galaxy that this beast would kill any human on sight. Nobody had ever bothered to check if that was actually true. And nobody, until now, had ever bothered to ask Kale himself what he had really been guarding all along. Weeks later, deep inside a sealed chamber beneath the ruins, human researchers finally uncovered what Kale had spent 1,000 years quietly guarding. Not a weapon, not a trap. A vault, built long ago by ancient humans themselves, sealed away before most of today's star nations even existed. Inside it, records, seeds, and genetic archives, humanity's own hidden legacy, saved from a war so old that only broken ruins remembered it had ever happened at all. According to the recovered logs, the ancient law had never truly belonged to the threshold pact at all. It had been planted by those same ancient humans. Clever piece of misdirection, meant to scare enemies away from the one thing worth protecting. Claim your own people will be killed on sight, and nobody thinks to look twice. Kale had never been built to hate humans. He had been built to protect them, and to wait, patiently, for exactly one moment. The moment a real human finally returned. Nobody along the way had ever explained that final piece of the puzzle to him. Not clearly, not completely. So Kale simply waited, alone, doing his best with a duty half-remembered, for 1,000 quiet years. Until Sierra Quinn fell out of the sky. The ancient law had never truly promised death. It had only ever been waiting for someone to come home. If this opened your eyes. So here is what really happened on Kithra. An ancient law promised death to any human who returned. A lonely guardian carried that broken duty for 1,000 years, without ever fully understanding it. One human crash-landed into the middle of it, and instead of finding a monster, she found a guardian who had simply been waiting, patiently, for the truth to finally catch up with him. Stories like this are exactly why this channel exists. Humans showing up in the middle of ancient galactic history, and somehow, quietly, changing the whole story just by being human. If this story pulled you in, hit that like button right now. It genuinely helps this channel reach more people who love HFY stories just as much as you do. And if you want more stories like Kale and Sierra, stories about lost worlds, forgotten laws, and humans who refuse to fit into the box the galaxy expected them to fit into, subscribe and turn on notifications. New HFY stories drop regularly, and you will not want to miss the next one. For those who want to go even deeper into this universe, check the link in the description for our newsletter. You will get early story drops, behind-the-scenes lore, and first access before videos go public. Before you go, drop a comment and let us know one thing. If you were Sierra, standing alone in those ruins the first time Kale appeared, would you have run, or would you have stood your ground? Type your answer below. I read every single one. Thank you for watching all the way to the end. Stories like this only reach more people because of viewers like you. See you in the next one.